Hi there, everybody on Zoom and here, and I'm David Lough, President of the Downtown Sarasota Condo Member Association, and I'm delighted to be here on a perfect weather day. It was nice to see the weather break, so to speak, away from what we've been doing. So welcome to this regularly scheduled meeting. As far as declaring a quorum, I know we have a quorum. Jamie's going to be a little bit late. Judy is not able to attend today. She's traveling or something. Ken and Roger. As far as I know, they are. I didn't hear to the contrary that I wouldn't be here, so I'm anticipating that in a minute. But at the moment, we do have a quorum. We've got 7 of us with Roger and Ken and Jamie yet to come, we believe. So with that said, we have a quorum. As far as the minutes, those were circulated the other day. And are there any comments or edits, additions, concerns about the minutes? Motion to approve as read. Okay, Bob Perillo, motion to approve. Is there a second? Second from Kathy? Oh, Patrick. Second from Patrick. All in favor? Aye. Unanimously approved. Under the treasurer's report, Clark, what do you have for us?
Excuse me, I just took a bite of cookie. We have $2,770.64 in the checking account.
And tell me about our last workshop as far as the bills.
Okay, we had total receipts of $1,400. The room cost us $2,000. The wine cost us $334.15. So when you throw those numbers together, we had a net loss of $934.15. We had 88 folks show up, 109 registered.
Okay. So
it was a good outing. Probably worth it.
All right. So we have no more lingering expenses hanging up there that
no.
we can think of.
No. We paid the church.
Okay. So $2,700 burning a hole in our pocket. Okay. Okay. With that said, I'm delighted to introduce our guest speaker. Jennifer and I don't know each other well, but what I do know, and in our brief exchanges, has been incredibly positive, with just a really can-do attitude. She's been with the city 10 months or so, give or take. Comes and we circulated her bio, so you can see her impressive resume of work in the Grant area in Nebraska, with the Disney Corporation. I mean, it's just like an incredibly well-rounded and something that would seem a really, really good fit with our city's needs. She's a manager of governmental relations, which I think her title probably is a bit of a misnomer, and I think that I'm getting the sense as I talk to others, she's involved in many more things than maybe her title implies. I've asked her today some of the things focus on. We're a downtown organization, about 12,000 people in our geographic area, and growing probably another 30% in the coming 5 or 6 years. So we're interested in growth. We're interested in grant opportunities to the extent that can help fund infrastructure things, and of course, insurance costs that we talked about is something also of interest to our area. So without further ado, and Jennifer knows, she'll be making remarks for 15, 20 minutes, and then taking questions from the board first, and maybe from some of other folks. So Jennifer, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you so much, David. I'm going to try to be fair to those on the screen. If I forget, just holler and I'll turn. I hope I'm as impressive after this presentation as David made me sound, or at least I hope people still like me after this presentation, as David said. And I tend to overtalk, so David, if I'm talking too much, just move me along or tell me it's time to stop. But as David said, I wanted to give first a little bit of an overview of kind of what the projects that fall under my purview at the city, and then focus on a couple of the items, like David said, that are important to this organization. So I will talk a little bit about some of our grants and appropriations that we do, also the legislative items that I tend to cover within an annual basis. And then we do have some special event ordinances. Special event permitting does fall under my purview as well. And we are looking at changing some of the special event ordinances, so I'll go through some of those proposed changes as well. As far as some of the legislative stuff, I'll touch on at least what I know of any insurance items that are happening currently, you know, in the legislation, which is nothing right now, but some of the things that happened last year and what I've heard may come about for this coming year. So those are a couple of things that I'll touch on today. So the first thing that I want to talk about a little bit is the government relations and the legislative side of what I do. And probably 2 slides ahead, I'm probably jumping around. One more. Perfect. And so I'll talk a little bit about the state and federal policies and appropriations. So every year, the City Commission adopts our federal and our state legislative priorities, and also the appropriations that we will be asking from a state and federal level. On October 16th City Commission meeting, we just approved the state. We have not approved the federal yet because we are waiting for our federal appropriation, which we were awarded from Congressman Stubbe this year. We were awarded $1 million appropriation to help fix some of the sidewalks and the safety issues in the Newtown neighborhood. And because of everything going on in Washington, D.C., as you can imagine, that appropriation has not gotten through all the final bills. So until that gets through, we wanted to wait until that was done before we start the federal. But we have completed our state legislative priorities. So as part of my job, I work with our local lobbyists, our state lobbyists, our federal lobbyists. I work with our city commission and our city manager to make sure that we're putting together legislative priorities that make sense for our city. We also then, like I said, put together appropriation requests. So every year we do put through appropriation requests of our state senators and representatives. Last year, we did get 2 appropriations that both our representatives and our senator pushed through for us. They did get approved through all of the committees, and then they got vetoed by our governor. So we did not get those appropriations from that final perspective. So we are gonna try again this year. Last year, we had a water quality appropriation that we asked for that did not get pushed through. So we're gonna, again, try again this year, potentially with a different representative that may help us push through. Not that our current one, it was not his doing it all, politics, right? So those are some of the things that fall under the government relations legislative side. This year, we have a whole list of legislative priorities. David, I can make sure I send you that list and you can send it out to the team. Most of those fall under the headings of, again, home rule. That's something we obviously fight for very hard, to make sure that the municipalities can make the most of the rules that make sense, or be able to at least put the ordinances in place that make sense for our city, try to make sure the state isn't preempting some of those. Vacation rentals fall under that. That's something that's very big for us that we want to try to keep control over, so we put that as a legislative priority. Last year, as most of you probably know, there was a Live Local Act that was passed that had a very positive aspect that fully funded an affordable housing grant that has been waiting to be fully funded for quite a while. So that was the positive of that. The negative of that is some of local ordinances were preempted up to the state regarding density and some of those building codes. So this year we are going to push and ask for those to come back. We probably won't get Live Local overturned, but what we're trying to do is take some of those local important aspects of the bill and bring those back to us. So we're going to work on those. So those are a couple of the home rule legislative priorities that are important to us. Obviously, water quality is always important because being so close to the bay, having so many waterways, canals, and those kind of things. So we have a lot of funds and grants that are available through the state. We want to make sure those continue to be fully funded so we can ask for those grants and those appropriations. So we're asking for some of those. Again, making sure that the local organizations are not being held accountable for things we don't have control over. So if there are things in the water, such as the PFAs, those kind of things fall into our water. We don't want to be legally liable for that. If somebody tries to ask us to clean that up, sues us for those kind of things, so we're asking that to be taken out of the legislative or out of the municipal's responsibility. So those are just a couple of them. I won't go through them all because like I said, I talk a lot and I'm trying not to. But those are some of the legislative priorities that we have in place for this year. We are also asking for 4 appropriations again from the state this year. We have an affordable housing aspect of what we're asking for. We also have a regional water taxi that we are potentially looking to work with Sarasota County and some other organizations to start at least the infrastructure to put in to bring a taxi here that would go potentially from, you know, the Longboat Key area or those places here to the Bay Park. I mean, obviously we haven't decided the specific areas, but at least to start funding the infrastructure for that. So we're asking for an appropriation for that, potentially. The Sarasota, the watershed project. So again, keeping our bayous and our canals cleaned up. That's one of the ones we're asking for. And then we're actually doing kind of a really cool project with Moat Marine, which is they are going to be partnering with us. And we're asking for an appropriation to help fund this, to purchase some equipment that Moat Marine would manage. They would report on the data that comes from that equipment, but it would be able to track some of the red tide aspects of the bay, some of the things that come into the bay that we want to make sure that we are monitoring those. So again, we would own the equipment and we would work with Moat Marine to do the data processing and reporting of that. So that's kind of an exciting project that we're looking forward to as well. So those are our 4 appropriations. So that kind of falls under the state and federal legislative priorities and the state and federal appropriations. As soon as we get going with the federal, again, those will all come through the city commission to approve, and then we'll be posting those for everybody to see those as well. So did I miss anything? And then one of the other things that fall under my purview as far as the governmental relations in the legislative is really bill tracking as well. So any bills that are coming through that are going to affect the municipality in some way, shape, or form, again, whether that be from state or federal, I'll be perfectly honest and transparent. It's a little bit harder for us to have a lot of say over federal bills. So our federal lobbyist keeps us in the purview of what's going on, make sure we're educated about it. We do let him know if there's things that would be super, affect the municipality. Most of the time, federal bills roll down to the state level. So we potentially worry more about the state bills, and that's what we focus on, though we do have an ear to what happens at the federal level as well. But our state bills are really the ones that we follow. And so again, whether it's the interim session like we're in now, whether it's the full session that'll happen after January, anytime a bill comes through that may potentially affect a municipality, we are working very closely with our lobbyist, and also we are part of the Florida League of Cities to really focus in. That's why we have those legislative priorities I talked about, because that's what triggers what is important to our municipality. If any bill comes through that affects anything that's on that legislative priority, that's where we tend to get involved and really start talking through with our lobbyist and with Florida League of Cities and our other partners, how may this affect us? From a municipality's perspective, we have to kind of walk that fine line, right? We know these legislatures are also those that approve our appropriations. They vote for our appropriations, they support our appropriations. So we have to also make sure we are careful about not to maybe outright oppose a bill that is being brought to the table from a senator or representative that may be somebody that would vote for our appropriation. So instead, what we will do is work with them to, how can we change that language? What are some suggested ways that we can maybe change some of these that may work or lessen some of the hardships? So we're not going in with a strong oppose on some of these. And then obviously we have our bills that we support very strongly, and we want to show that support for them. We do make trips up to Tallahassee with the city commissioners to go talk to our representatives. We had, I think, a great and a successful trip to Tallahassee last year. We'll also make trips up to Washington DC to meet with our congressmen up there as well. So that's a little bit of the state and federal appropriations and priorities. As far as the bill tracking, I know one of the bills that David asked me to talk about a little bit from a perspective of what is important to this group really has to do with insurance. And as of right now, and we are just in an interim session, there has been no bill that has been introduced yet in interim session that really speaks to or talks about property insurance as of yet. Last interim session, and I don't know how familiar you guys were with this bill, there was an interim bill passed. It was Senate Bill 2A. And that was passed with some changes made to the two state insurance policies that was meant to help some of the problems that we are having with insurance here in the state of Florida. The biggest issue, well, the two biggest issues being the premiums that keep going up and up and up. The other thing is the fact that people are also getting dropped and insurance companies are leaving Florida. So some of the things that were passed in that bill that was meant to potentially bring down some of the premium costs and also to encourage more insurance companies to come into the state of Florida. The reason why they want to do that is obviously the more insurance companies, the more competitive the pricing is, hopefully the premiums will get pushed down. So some of the things that they passed in that bill from last interim session in December of 2022 actually removed the ability to have your attorney fees paid by the other party. So if you're going to sue somebody, whether it's the insurance company or whether it's the insured, they have to pay their own insurance or their attorney costs. We may not like the sound of that if we're the ones that are suing, but what that does, again, or at least the philosophy behind that, is the insurance companies aren't worried about having fraudulent lawsuits that they're going to have to pay in attorney's fees for. So again, the theory is that's going to encourage them to come into the state. They're not as worried about frivolous lawsuits because that was something that was happening here in Florida because some of the laws in Florida dealing with insurance weren't as cleaned up as some of the other states and did allow some of these fraudulent lawsuits. So some of the laws were put in place to help with that. The other thing that they put in place is assignment of benefits is now prohibited. So that was something that was a problem for people who were insured, and there were contractors that were going out and having people sign over their benefits because that was allowed in Florida at the time, and then you didn't know what you were signing over. Now you have no rights to those benefits because you just assigned them to the contractor. Again, those were driving up frivolous lawsuits. They were driving up some of the premiums. So there were things like that that were put in place from this bill that they are hoping to see some encouragement to bring more insurers into the state. In full transparency and honesty, in the articles that I've read and some of the people I've talked to, premiums have not come down. So they have not seen a decrease in premiums as of now. They have seen, from what again I'm hearing, they have seen an increase in insurance companies that are interested in coming into the state of Florida. And so they are getting people to register, other insurance companies to register here in the state of Florida. That was another thing of the bill is they have changed the registration process for those companies. Again, trying to make sure the companies that are coming here are reputable insurance companies. So those were some of the items in the bill. There were a few other things, but those were the big ones that they talked about to really bring that cost down. So, and at the end, if you guys can interrupt me at any time to ask questions, or again, we'll have Q&A at the end if you guys have any questions.
Let's do that at the end.
Okay, perfect. So the other thing as far as bill tracking, you know, again, I keep track of any of the bills that are important to the municipality throughout the year. I'll share those with Marlon, our city manager, and our city commissioners, so they can keep in the loop of them. But as you all know, bills change so substantially throughout the entire session that what is important at the very beginning may change so significantly towards the end. So it really is towards the end of session that we get busier to try to figure out how are all these going to affect the city. So it's a busy time from here on out, I would say, for the bill tracking. So that covers a little bit of the government relations and the legislative from the legislative piece that I cover. The other thing is there's a couple special projects that I do work with our city manager on as well. Two of those are development projects that we are looking at doing in the city. The Bay Park, obviously everybody knows what that is. Phase 1 was completed last year. They just had their big 1-year anniversary event 2 weekends ago, which was very successful. I heard they had, was it 20,000 people, I think, that came to that event over the course of a 5-day event. So they had a lot of people coming to celebrate their 1-year anniversary. So phase 2 is actually starting right now. So phase 2 is the next 14 acres that they are going to be developing at the Bay Park. Phase 1 was approximately 14 acres as well. Phase 2 is about a $65 million 14-acre project that they're going to be starting now. It'll take about 2-3 years from what I'm hearing to complete. So 2026 is what they're looking at from a completed perspective of that. And phase 2 really talks about, and I really should have put it more on the map so I could have pointed to it, but phase 2 will look at enhancing the cultural district, and the cultural district of the Bay Park is where that kind of runs from the Blue Pagoda, if you know, or the Garden Club, and then there's the Blue Pagoda, there's the Chitsey Library, the old library, so they're actually going to be bringing that back up and house either some opportunities for people to hold events in there or office space. They're not exactly sure what they're going to use that for yet. We've got the municipal auditorium and the Bayfront Community Center in the back that they can rent out for cultural events and those kind of things. So the art center is there. So we're gonna kind of look at cleaning up that area, putting in more walkability in that area, encourage people to come down to that area, come to the art center and do more of the events that they're holding there. The Dockside Canal District, so they're going to be putting in some new floating docks in that area. And they're also going to be putting in some temporary restaurants. They're not putting in any permanent restaurants yet because they have to get the infrastructure in for that, but they'll have some temporary, meaning that if a storm is coming, you know, that restaurant has to be able to move, whether it's food trucks or just be able to be taken down for that storm event. So they are going to be putting some of those in there. They're gonna potentially increase some of the boat ramps that are there as well. And then a big part of this is really creating that resilient shoreline. So making sure that we have the grasses coming back for our wildlife, making sure that the shoreline isn't falling in to the bay, and making sure that we're cleaning up all of the storm water and everything before it goes into the bay. They did that as part of phase 1. It was very successful, so they're looking to make sure they do that all for phase 2 as well. Oh, and creating the Sunset Pier as well. So they're gonna have a pier that sticks out into the water that people could go enjoy, walk on, fish on, so that'll be there as well. And then another part of the project that I'm working on with the city manager is the Sarasota Performing Arts Center. So that will potentially be part of the 53 acres of the Bay Park when the entire 53 acres is completed. That's obviously not set to be done, you know, before probably 8-10 years, right? The entire 53 acres. The Sarasota Performing Arts Center may be part of that project. And so right now we are working with the Sarasota Performing Arts Foundation to do the legwork on how this may be brought to fruition. So we are working now with the foundation to select a design architect, which was done through a committee that the foundation and the city had put together. There was a design architect that was selected. We are waiting for that design architect to get licensed here in Florida, which I'm told is almost done. And then we'll start negotiating with that design architect. Once they have, if we get that design architect to agree to our contract terms, then they'll start creating the design for what that Performing Arts Center could potentially look like. That'll give us a cost and all of those items as well. So right now we're in the very early stages of that. But once we get the design architect under contract, we should be able to provide a bit more information with that. Both of these projects are funded through a city and a private and a public partnership. So with the Bay Park, the city has partnered with the Bay Park Conservancy, which is a 501c3, and with the Sarasota Performing Arts Center, the city has partnered with the Performing Arts Center Foundation, which is also a 501c3. So for the Performing Arts Center, our agreement is a 50-50 funding split with them. So they provide 50% of the costs through private donations, through grants, through anything that they can do as a 501c3. And then the city would provide 50% of the funding, again, through grants, potential appropriations, and a big part of that for both of these projects is also TIF funding. So that's how we have the partnerships in place for both of those projects. The next area that I work on is the grants. And for the city, and I'm lucky enough to have an amazing grants coordinator who does all of the heavy lifting and all of the research for this. But we do a lot of grants here in the city. We do both federal and state grants. So the big part of that is just doing the research and finding the grants, right? And so I had Amy pull some statistics on, you know, how many grants do we kind of look at within a specific month period, and how many of those actually come to fruition, right? Because there's a lot of grants that we have to do the research on that sound fantastic. People send us grants all the time, but when you really dig into it, there's a lot of things that maybe won't work for the city. First and foremost, one of them is they usually almost have matching funds, right? So they say, we're gonna give you $1 million grant, that's fantastic, but we have to provide 50% matching funds, right? So when we look into some of these grants, we have to make sure as a city it makes sense from a return on investment perspective, and that we have it budgeted and that it really is going to pay for the project and make sense for the project. So Amy does a lot of that research for us. A lot of the federal grants also have a lot of reporting requirements that go on for years. So again, looking at it from a return on investment perspective, we need to make sure it makes sense from, you know, what is this going to require? How many extra environmental studies do we have to do for this? What is that going to cost the city? So those are all things that we put into from a time perspective to make sure the grants make sense. So they may filter out, she can do, within the last 6 months, she looked at over 100 grants that then whittled down to about 13 grants that we applied for. And I know 13 grants sounds not like a lot, but we're talking tens of millions of dollars that go into those 13 grants, to be honest with you. On top of that, we currently have about 36 grants that have already been executed, and they could be from 2 years ago to 5 years ago to 2 months ago that we're managing. And again, managing meaning we're sending out reporting on those grants. We're making sure we're getting invoiced for the expenditures that we put out for those grants. And right now, for just those 36 grants, it's a little bit under $50 million that we have just for those 36. So again, the numbers may not sound large, but for a city like Sarasota, the amount of funds that we get from that is actually a pretty big amount. Throughout the city, we have different funding areas, and I've only put like 3 on here because we have so many that we fund for as far as projects. Transportation is probably the biggest one that we get the most of our grants from, or at least the biggest high-end dollar amounts for our grants. And I will say our transportation team is fabulous under Nick Patel. Alvi and Corinne are the 2 that work under this, and they do almost all their own grant research. They do almost all their own grant writing. They are absolutely fabulous, and they have so many projects going on right now. I told Nick I would give him a little plug because he is going to be presenting at a commission workshop on November 13th. And within that commission workshop, he's going to be talking about his engineering manual that they're putting together. So he does have that he's going to talk about, but they're also going to talk about a lot of the transportation projects that they're looking at as far as for the downtown area. And some of those projects that he said that they would be talking about are the Main Street Complete Streets project. And we're actually looking at a Safe Streets grant for that to be able to pay for some of that. Also St. Armand's, they're looking at doing a partial complete street. Can I say that? Is that like a oxymoron, a partial complete street? They're looking at also a Protect grant for that. So we do have some grants that are coming into some of these transportation projects that they're looking at. Fruitville Road is another one, which at this time we don't have a grant that fits that one, but we're continuing to research that. And then Boulevard of the Arts in 10 is also another project that they're going to be talking about on the 13th. That one they are looking to fund with the RAISE grant, which is a federal grant. We have applied for the RAISE grant the last 2 years, and we have been unsuccessful in getting that. But every time we apply for it, we sit down with the grant department, from what I hear, and we have great feedback to help us build that grant application each year. So we're really excited this year to put that grant back in place for the Boulevard of the Arts and 10th Street project. So those are some of the transportation projects and some of the grants that we're looking at to cover some of those. We work very closely with the Bay Park. We apply for grants for the Bay Park under our name. That again goes to that funding responsibility that we have. The Bay Park, additionally on their own, will apply for grants that they're, that they can apply for as well. So we are able to do grants for both the city and the Bay Park there. We do a lot of FEMA grants, as you can imagine. So anytime we have storms or disasters, a lot of Amy's time is doing FEMA grants. We also have a big project right now that we are partnering with the county. So it's the CDBG Disaster Recovery Grant. Typically that is a HUD grant, meaning those grants are usually used for housing, affordable housing within the city. This one is particular to mitigating any disasters that happen in Sarasota County. So Sarasota County was actually just awarded a $200 million grant for this project. They are working with surrounding municipalities, including the city, to be able to have an application process. So we weren't awarded the grant directly. The county was awarded that grant. We then will work with the county to do an application process. So we have submitted about 14 projects to the county, and almost all of those projects deal with some sort of mitigation within the city to help when disasters happen again. So we have a lot of, again, transportation projects in there, a lot of road projects, making sure we're raising the roads if they're prone to flooding, so people can exit. So there's a lot of those kind of projects in there as well. The other big part of the CDBG that the county is working on with that is housing. Not only building affordable housing, but looking at housing that's throughout the county that are in flood zones that continually get hit. So they're looking at doing reimbursements for people who have already paid themselves to help rebuild or reconstruct their homes. They're also looking at a voluntary buyout. So if it's a home that is hit very often, is in a flood zone, there's requirements that you have to meet, you actually may qualify for a buyout. And in that case, the municipality or the county would then agree to take on that land and keep it as open space, public space, municipal space, so they can't, again, build on it and continue to have those problems. So we're working really closely with the county on that grant as well.
Terrific.
One more thing.
Okay.
Am I up on time though, David?
We're getting
Okay, I promise I'll
close,
be really
so
fast.
please, if you could.
Last
please.
thing, special events ordinances. So we are, and I won't go through all of them, but if anybody has any questions on them. So again, special event permitting does fall under my purview, meaning if there is somebody who wants to do a special event, either on public property or on a public right-of-way, they have to go through a permitting process through my team. We have ordinances in place that dictate when a special event permit can be approved, when a special event permit can be denied. There's also regulations for that event organizer on what they have to do as far as following regulations. So there are some things that we are proposing to change in that ordinance that will limit some of the special events that can happen downtown as far as the number of them, a little bit more requirements that the event organizers may have to follow. So there's some of those that we are cleaning up as well in the ordinances. So like I said, I won't go through those, but we will be having an town hall to go through the ordinances. We're hoping to do that in December. The ordinances are with the city attorney right now for him to review. And then once I have his blessing, we'll schedule the town hall and we'll go through all of those special event ordinances before we obviously bring them to the city commission.
Terrific.
You okay?
Okay, let's, board members, Bob, question.
Simple question. When you mentioned for grants, they usually require 50% from the city. Is that a hard, fast number, or are there times when you can get 100% grant, 75% grant?
Yes, great question. So it is not a hard and fast. So not all grants require 50%. We are lucky enough to find some grants that they'll fully fund. Those are very, very rare. I will say that. We don't get very many opportunities to have 100% grant. There's at least some sort of match that we have to do. Not always 50. Sometimes there's 30%, sometimes 20%. And the nice thing as well about that is you don't always have to bring hard cash, right? So we can put in administrative time. So when we look at those grants, we also look at if there's going to be a lot of administrative time, let's say from planning department, right? If they're putting together new zoning text amendments or something like that, we can use all of that time as our match. So it doesn't always have to be hard funds as well.
Are you allowed an indirect rate on those? An indirect cover administrative overhead?
Yeah, that is a really good question. I don't know if it's an indirect rate or if it's just hour for hour.
Sometimes the percentage 28% or 13, whatever the federal agency may approve. I
Right, right. And there might be different requirements for each one. So yeah, that's a really good question.
Others with Victor?
I know at one point in time, there was some discussion about a raised platform in Boulevard of the Arts and Tamiami Trail. And grant was applied for, but unfortunately didn't come through. Are you all going after that grant again?
I believe that is the raise grant that Nick was talking about, which they are going to be going for again this year, is specifically for the Boulevard of the Arts and the 10th Street project. So yes.
Yes, not 10. Boulevard of the Arts and Tamiami.
Oh, in Tamiami. I promised Nick I wouldn't make up anything, so he said if I can't answer anything, I'm supposed to say I'll get the answer and bring it back. Or he said, you guys can come to the 13th, the meeting on the 13th. But I will absolutely get that answer for you, Victor, and get it to you guys. Yeah, for sure.
And one other thing.
Yes.
A lot of talk in my part of the world was the Boulevard of the Arts about parking along Boulevard of the Arts going from Tamiami Trail all the way to the Rosemary, through the Rosemary. Is there an effort to get grant of some kind in order to enhance the parking opportunity?
We are always talking parking. I am not aware of any specific project in the works right now to do any specific parking along that way. But again, I will absolutely check with Nick on that and also with Steve Cover, our planning department, and see if they have anything in either their comprehensive plan. So they have a 5-year comprehensive plan that we can look at and see. And then also our 10-year comprehensive plan for the planning department. So I'll definitely look into that and get back to you guys.
Quick question on the town hall that you're closing for the special events that's
Yes.
coming up. And that is to a town hall for who is being invited to this town hall?
So it'll be, I mean, it's open to the public,
Sure.
so anybody from the public can come. We are obviously specifically reaching out to anybody who has applied for a special event permit in the last year, or anybody who has held any sort of special event within the last year. Merchants within the areas of those special events, we want to make sure they're all very aware of it. Most of the changes will affect the event organizers and what they're doing as far as the process of applying for a special event, but it is open to the public and anybody will be allowed to come.
So affected, persons of affected status that are in there, will they be notified as well? Condos or?
When we put out the public notice, yeah, we can look at making sure the associations are aware of that as well.
Jennifer, first of all, I applaud the work on the grant front. I know how tedious and meticulous it is. I think there's one observation that I've had, and I've been involved for 4 or 5 years in the Boulevard of the Arts and 10th, is that it feels like some of our projects are, we either get the grant or it doesn't happen. And the concern being just with the growth and businesses and, you know, missing opportunities. For example, on Fruitville, as an example, development is starting along there with condo projects.
Right.
If we don't get on with planning for that now, we're going to end up with a hodgepodge of designs as opposed to, I'm not going to say a blank canvas. We know how ugly and dangerous and what a moat it becomes psychologically to get improved connectivity.
Right.
So it feels to us that grants are important, but you know, this opportunity to piece together either multimodal impact fees or in the case of Boulevard of the Arts, TIF money or something, rather than betting the farm the 3rd time on the raise grant,
Right.
which we were very actively involved in DSCA and getting 30 letters of support, I think.
For them.
So we'll do it again, but you seem to feel they were optimistic, somewhat optimistic last year. Is the 3rd time a charm? And I mean, seriously,
Yeah.
is there the politics being what they are, given the politics of our state and who's in Washington these days? Any reactions to that?
I personally wouldn't be able to answer that question probably very well, David. I did ask the question, what feedback are we getting when we are not getting the grant in the last 2 years? And really, the response that I got back was, we are getting positive feedback from the grant coordinators and the department in which we submit the grant to, meaning there's not much that they're telling us we need to change in our approach or in how we're writing up the grant, that when it gets to who is picking the grants, they are picking their pet projects. And so from that perspective, what at least I hear, and this is just Jennifer Jorgensen talking, this is nobody else at the city talking, what I hear in that is, at least from what I can do, is that's a call to my lobbyists pretty quickly on the federal side to be able to say, what are we missing as far as whose pet projects and who do we need to be in there talking to these particular departments to make this one of their pet projects so we can be selected. And so I can only say that from my perspective and from what I have control over. But again, in talking to those that are applying for the grants, we're not hearing feedback that there's much we can do to improve the writing of the grant itself.
I've got one more, connectivity. You mentioned the water taxi, and we
Yes.
all think we know the success of the trolley,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And built in the VO kind of thing, relatively successful. You weren't around when we had the iRide vehicles. You're familiar with the gotcha stroke iRide?
The concept of it, yeah.
The 6-passenger or whatever it seems to, I think, DSCA, that maybe that didn't work as well when it was in, because we now have a different dynamic. We've got more people. Have we reached critical mass? In other words, with the quay developing a little bit too far for some people to walk downtown, with the big apartment building out by the movie theater, a little bit too far. We think there's a real opportunity when we talk about connectivity of complete streets, but connectivity in these electric vehicles to alleviate some of the parking issues or enhance business and things like that. I guess my question is grant opportunities for those kinds of things. Is that something you've been asked to look at?
Absolutely. So we have, as part of our legislative priorities, David, the whole multimodal transportation is a big legislative priority for us. That also includes a lot of CAV, electric stations that we would put throughout. Nick told me about a project that I'm not supposed to talk about, so I won't, because I don't want to get in trouble with Nick. But just the fact that they are absolutely looking at other opportunities. We are going for grants in those areas for sure. There is, and I can't remember the name of it, but there is a CAV specific grant that Albie is looking at that I know Amy is helping her with as well. And I can look into that and see if I can find what the name of that is, David. So it's definitely something that we know as a priority and have put in as a legislative priority to not only push funding for that, but also to make sure we are doing the research and looking for that as well, so.
We're basically out of time. Is there anybody dying for one last question here, other member reps? Okay, well, thank you. You've been fantastic.
Perfect.
We learned some things, and we certainly look forward to working with you, and I think we got some real opportunities here that we hope to work on as we grow downtown another 3,000 or 4,000 people. So
Sounds
we
great.
want to be ready. So,
Thank you all.
thanks
Thank
so
you very
much.
much. I appreciate it. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thanks, Jennifer. Okay, and moving along, where is the agenda? One other thing is we have a new associate member to review and approve. That's KW Property Management Consulting, and is a representative from those folks here. Jamie, do you, who is it? I'm at a law, I'm not remembering. Patrick, can you help me? Where did this?
Came in online.
It came
Came in
out.
online.
Yeah,
Came up, okay.
Yeah. I don't see anybody here, so I guess we just.
They had been a previous member
Okay.
several years ago.
Okay,
They used
So-
to have the same property name.
Okay, so we welcome them back. So may I have a motion to accept them as an associate member, as a gold member? Is there
As a associate goal, yeah.
Associate.
So moved.
okay, by Patrick, so moved. Is there a second?
Second.
A second by Jamie. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, so welcome to the KW Property Management Consulting Group.
David?
Yes.
You might want to note our additional guest has arrived.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Commissioner Erin Huck, who I saw this morning, she's following me, I think. No.
Other way around, David.
So we certainly welcome you and appreciate your time. We just know how incredibly busy you are and dedicated. We appreciate your support and what you do for the city. Okay, old business, city parking, and I will raise my hand. Peter got me something yesterday, needed a couple little tweaks. We have a memo that we, how should we handle this, Peter? I know.
Well, I want to give an update because it was
Yeah.
put together pretty quickly at the last meeting as a result of a presenter at that point, auction. So I had suggested that we ought to, Broxton, as you know, is going around making presentations to various groups, SDEA, the Merchants Group, DID, DSA, the DSCA, and as I've been attending those meetings, how they come about, it seems I've been following him around. And I'm hearing the same kinds of questions coming up. And so I thought it might be to his advantage, the city's advantage and ours, if we could put together a group and come together with a unified voice on the things that we agree with and the things that we may not agree with, rather than everybody show up and scream at the same time, but have more of a concerted effort that we could share with Broxton before he made it public to the city commission, so that he'd be aware of where the minefields were. He's relatively new to the city and so forth. I suggested we do that, and I suggested that I would organize it if I didn't have to chair it. That's the part about chair didn't make it into the meeting minutes, however, so David has full executive authority. I am president and chair. So I put a memo together after calling folks, and at this time of the year, to get the merchants, to get certain other people. Everybody's very, very busy. And so it's been very difficult. Some people can make an evening meeting, some people can make a morning meeting, some people would like to have lunch, and so forth. So I put this memo together, and it should say draft on it, because it looks like in the old business note that it's to be distributed in advance of the meeting. It meant distributed to the members of the board, not to anybody else. I don't know if you saw that. If you didn't, if you did, and you need a copy, I'd be glad to pass out that memo. But, so what I'm suggesting is I'm going to put out a memo similar to this, asking, and I'm asking individuals who represent these groups, if they would take time with me on the phone. They would spend interview time on the phone with me for 15, 20 minutes, maybe no longer than that, about the various concerns that we see on the back page of the memo, which are several issues that came up on the parking proposals that seem to be highlights of that, not necessarily things that are the most important or the least important. To get a sense from those folks, and then try to meet through email. Because as I talked to Mr. Harvey, he indicated that this is likely not to come before the commission until after the first of the year. That's based on the agenda right now, and nothing firm has been stated. So that's why I wanted to distribute it to you folks. I want to make sure you know what we're doing and you still approve of what we're doing, but that we would probably do it rather than through email and telephone conversations than by a general meeting. And you all, I think Patrick's already made some notes for me and sent them. If you would see anything you think we ought to include it, just get it to me, and I'll continue to update you at the meetings, the progress of this method rather than face-to-face meetings.
I can tell you that if you go to the barber on Main Street, it's a topic of discussion, you know, there's a certain amount of concern. Because they want to encourage people to come downtown. And increase fees, increased hours, increase whatever. And the impression I got from that presentation, he seemed obsessed with making money for the, you know, turning this into some sort of business, you know.
And that has come up too,
Yeah.
you know, several times, that if it's gonna fall to, if there's a profit falling to the bottom line of parking, maybe it ought to be distributed in the broad area of transportation. Maybe it ought to be a match to some grant that Jennifer gets that would increase,
Exactly.
use it more specific rather than having that profit fall into the bottom line for other
It'd be
discretionary.
great if they had things like shuttle vans,
That-
like
that has-
Duval's has.
yeah. So I
Yeah,
don't,
and I think-
unless there's comment or.
Yeah, we, Peter and I met with another commissioner today, and it came up, and, you know, the real opportunity, if there is going to be some modifications and some additional revenue, that it be sequestered in a pot for some kind of targeted
I'd love to get out of my
purpose. So thanks for doing that, Peter, because it is, we're trying to, I can imagine if you're a commissioner or whatever, I'm gonna use the word chaos of, you know, having 8 different associations contacting
There'll
you.
be people at the city commission meetings in their t-shirts.
Right.
Well, we may not prevent that, but certainly we'd have a unified voice among the administration of the organization.
All right, that's it, Peter? Thanks,
Yes,
thank you. As far as a president's report, I circulated a few days ago some miscellaneous notes and status of stuff. I mean, I don't have anything per se to talk about, other than some important things continue to work their ways through the commission. The ZTAs, which will come up in a minute, are incredibly important and life changers almost. It could potentially be, but I don't think I have anything else specific that I may chime in on some of these other aspects as we go through it. Kathy, do you have anything from a city downtown?
My days I don't get to the commission meetings like I used to, so.
Okay. I will say the one I did see a new project come, an attainable mix, right with the tube guy off, you know, across from the Baptist church downtown, a 230 unit apartment with the 12% attainable units. So we're seeing as a trend, if you will, things moving east as far as development.
You say across from the Baptist church on Main Street?
On Main Street,
So
yeah.
they'll take out the shops across the street?
Yeah, the tube dude, if you can. place
yeah,
where
yeah,
that is,
yeah, sure.
There are 3 parcels in there.
Oh, okay.
So the operative point here is
Restaurant.
that we're getting development heading east and then some heading north along the trail, as well as infill for whatever. The other thing is the closings at the Baso condo have begun. I believe they're closing 2, 3 a business, so that's 149 new resident units that should be pretty fully occupied in the next 2-3 months. That's all I've got. Moving on, arts and cultural, I anticipated Ken did not tell me he was not able to make it. I understand the Blue Ribbon Committee is scheduled to meet again real soon. I don't know exactly when, but that goes on. And we heard from Jennifer that one of the complications is the architect firm selected, turns out, didn't have the appropriate kind of license to do work in Florida. So I think they're jumping through hoops to try and fix that. I don't know the details on that, but hopefully that in parallel with the Blue Ribbon Committee, works its way through the process. Associate events and committee, I want to stand up and give a round of applause. I mean that seriously to Jamie and Anna for the workshop and Patrick's involvement in the candidates here. But I'm sorry I missed it, but everything I have heard has just been immensely complimentary about that. And the video should be, if we get that up, the video of
It was submitted to our.
Yep, okay.
Robin has it, yeah.
Okay,
I don't know.
and I think we need to, we need to encourage people to watch that, because I think there was a fair bit of meat and in that, and I hope if there's any feedback from our associate members who saw that, please, I hope you're pleased with what you saw out of that and the exposure that DSCA continues.
Yes. The video is up on the website, YouTube channel for DSCA.
Okay, great.
Did you guys get a lot of people stopping by your tables?
Yes.
I will say that I think the format of that is really good.
That was David's suggestion.
The
That was-
beginning,
yeah.
having that time for people to mingle around. I think a lot of people saw a lot of engagement with the vendors. Not so many on the back end of the
Yeah.
program. That's a little bit, but I think people do appreciate that, and they do go around and they visit the vendors. So I think that format is excellent.
Good, so we're going to be meeting, a few weeks about our spring events, so.
Finish
just
one, you start another one.
Spinning plates here, but again, hats off to you, Jamie, you're just phenomenal.
Thank
So, as far as our holiday party at the December 6th, I'm happy to report, it was Judy Mower's initial idea, then Ken, we're having the Jazz Club of Sarasota speak. They're incredibly professional, internationally known, but a little bit under the radar screen. So not only are they going to present, but they're going to be bringing a couple performers. So we're going to have some soft jazz out poolside, wherever.
Yeah, I've already talked to several of the board members, and what we'd like to do is set them up outside on the pool deck.
Right.
And this way the residents here can come down and enjoy it. And we're thinking probably put a table out there for, if they want to do a BYOB, we're not going to entertain all the residents here as much as we'd like to. But put a table there and, put out some plastic cups so they can sit out on the pool deck, because obviously there's no glass out there. But if they're set up out there, we had a steel drum player out there, and it worked out really well.
Okay, so I'm really pleased. We're adding a new dynamic to our holiday party. I did confirm with some of the administrative support people for the commissioners and Marlin, et cetera, that they do have it calendared. And so we'll be now extending invitations to people like Nick Patel and others, but certainly the commissioners, I'm told, have it on their calendars, Marlin. But we'll try.
Do we have any idea of what the costs for the, I assume they're going to charge for their performance here?
Yeah, and I told Ken it'd probably be good for a couple $100, and I'll somehow make that happen. Didn't mean to commit too much, but somehow we'll find a couple $100.
Broadway could probably also kick in some money.
And speaking of that, I mean, we would appreciate from some of our associates if somebody is willing to add a little bit more for a holiday party. I think everybody realizes the cost these days of doing these events, and food and everything is just, our member fee for a condo is $200 a year. So you heard Clark say our balance in the checkbook is $2,700. So.
Exactly.
Okay, so I'm excited about the holiday party, and we're gonna have a great time. Green space, Patrick. None? Okay. Homeless committee, Peter.
Well, tangentially to the homeless committee, I'm gonna pull a page out of Jamie's book, I think, and I'm gonna have wine and beer at my meetings to encourage attendance. Seems that our
works.
meetings are well attended if they start with wine. At any rate, no, I've been working on the parking, but tangentially to that, I've been meeting with Deidre Jones, who's the homeless coordinator for the city, and meeting with the police department, trying to stay abreast of what's happening in the homeless. I need to get the committee together to do that, and that'll happen after November 9th, when hopefully we will have another City Watch meeting, which is our effort to help the police chief establish a pilot program in the city to start up the neighborhood watch programs again. And we're moving forward, and meet with one of our new committee members who's helping us with setting up some of the organizational things around the WhatsApp and so forth. I'm meeting with him on Friday, finding it a hold of him. Thank you very much,
I
Sam.
really proud of
You've
you.
embarrassed him into calling me.
I did.
So I'll let you know more on that as it develops.
Okay. Transportation, Roger isn't here. Jennifer said something about streetscapes, and I learned something new 30 minutes ago. And that is, I knew there was a commission workshop on the 13th, that I thought was going to talk about Fruitville amongst it. It appears from what she said that it may be more comprehensive than Nick providing updates on Fruitville, Maine, Boulevard of the Arts and 10th, and I don't know what else. So the agenda for that workshop is not out yet, but here we are on the first, it should be pretty soon. So I think Marlon was looking for direction on Fruitville specifically. As I'm recalling, there's $200,000 in this year's budget for a relook at what was previously done, and I think he's looking for direction, whether to proceed with that. Zoning, okay, so here we go. This is the big enchilada on tonight's agenda, and that is the bars, restaurants, nightclubs, zoning text amendments coming before the commission on Monday. And a group of us, thank you, Victor, for stepping into the saddle here on helping lead, chair, coordinate on this kind of matter. A group of us had a Zoom call, was that yesterday? Oh, yeah, yesterday for an hour and a half talking about it. Victor, would you like to say a few words about this? I would say, number one, I think there's a consensus this is really important, right? That in the beginning, I will be the first to say that I thought the charge of the planning group was to clean up and refine some restaurants, bars, and definitions and stuff. And what has morphed into, in my opinion, is some more than that could have some pretty significant impacts on the nature potentially of our downtown or the Rosemary or whatever. So with that kind of preamble, I'm looking between tag team between you, Peter, Patrick on this.
First of all, thank you for starting me out on something real easy. We had 2 meetings already on this. We're about to have a third. Initially, the idea was to come forward with synchronized, cohesive commentary for the commissioners to get. 3 minutes is not enough time to have one person or 5 people sit down and present everything. And so as a consequence, we worked effectively, I think, to write down what we thought were cohesive points. What are the things that we want to talk about? And I'm not going to begin to try to strategy. All I'm saying is we're working to make a presentation to the commission sense that drives home certain realities and will help us with the individual specialties that some of us have to reach the commission. Just, what is it, we need 3, to understand the importance that this thing has for all of us in our lives. So again, a lot of people will be watching this, and a lot of people are going to be speaking this coming Monday. We want to make a cohesive, clean commentary that says, yeah, that's what we're doing. What can we do? I'll leave it, take it to Patrick and Peter. And some of you have written some great stuff. Really, the memos that are going around here are just fantastic.
Well, just to follow up on that, Victor, thank you. You've done a yeoman's job in getting us this far. But I think what we've come to the conclusion, somewhat of a conclusion, with the 5 of us who have been meeting, pushing, is that this isn't a simple fix, a simple couple of amendments to an existing ordinance. That this has come to the realization that this is so complex and requires so much analysis that I think the recommendation will be to push for the commission to push the pause button on this one. And I'm not one for tabling things, but there are just a number of things in this set of amendments that aren't well understood until you start pulling it apart. I mean, just something as simple as the glib comment that restaurants and bars are synonymous, that they're the same thing. You don't need to designate one from the other. Or that we're going to take the word tavern out. It's outdated. I don't know who thought of outdated tavern, but the definition of a tavern is exactly what we're talking about. You don't find it in any definition of a bar or a bar room. A tavern is an establishment that's primarily set up to serve alcohol. Or a restaurant is primarily an establishment to serve food. They're not the same things. And so you can't memorialize them in an intensity of use kind of situation. So there are a number of issues like this that are going to take greater involvement than input. I'm a real advocate of streamlining with input, where the public sits and gives input to the staff, and the staff takes notes. Pretty passive process when you think about it. What we need here is a workshop. We need a discussion, an open discussion of some of these items, because I know that the members of the community this most affects, which is the restaurants and the taverns and places that serve liquor. In my walking around this week and talking to these people, some of them didn't even realize it's coming up on Monday. They had no idea. And when I started to talk about this, they really were amazed that this was going on and they didn't know about it. That's nobody's fault, because they're better about it. So I think what we're pushing for in one, and correct me anybody, we're pushing for a pause and let's have an analysis. There's no reason to hurry on this. It's probably not going to have any effect until into 2024 anyway, as I understand it from at least one memo I saw on the public access site from California. And I think we've got time to get this right. We've got time to get this one so that it doesn't create more problems than it fixes, and doesn't lead us into a situation having more attorneys battling the city issues that could have been addressed ahead of it.
Patrick, former planning board member,
Well, I mean, I did appreciate the opportunity to be involved in the dialogue and discussions, and I agree with what Peter Fanning was saying and Victor in terms of the kind of the comprehensive impact of trying to make a few definitional changes. May not have been fully understood. And so, but at the same time, from my perspective, having, like I say, 6 years on a planning board and watched city commission, et cetera, there's a practical aspect of what's practical come Monday. And in order to get a third vote, I think it's going to have to be very, very focused that many of the objections that were being raised that deal with the livability and vibrancy, et cetera, I don't believe they're going to resonate beyond what's currently has voted so far and not been the majority around that. So given the current makeup of the city commission, more practical, from my personal perspective, might be to focus on where there is significant impact, potential impact, especially from the legal side that costs the city money, costs time and effort. And so what is more practical is to take a look at the things like the definition around bars on rooftops. And that side of it is where we've heard the most complaints over the last few years from all of our residents, and where it seems like these changes there's a potential loophole in there that's been identified. I don't think that's something that can be edited during a few hours on a commission meeting. And so that to me is one key area that really needs focus on. The second is the expansion of the exclusionary zone. It's one thing to say, okay, Main Street, it works fine, but has that really been dialogue in Rosemary District? And where you have a really good community input from both the higher priced condo residents as well as the apartment residents, some of whom love to be able to go out and party several nights a week or whatever. So that to me is where the community dialogue is. The third thing is, from our perspective here, DSCA did host a public input workshop on this on June 22nd. And I think maybe we failed to get more info out on that. There's many people sitting at the table here who were not present at that meeting. And I found that to be a very productive meeting because we had people from many of the businesses downtown that showed up at that. And that was the type of dialogue we'd like to see more. But that was the public input side to that. They then codified it into red line changes that I don't think has had that opportunity for that kind of multi-dialogue other than in a quote, public hearing, which you don't really get dialogue.
Right. And I would add to this, at the planning board, it did go 3-2. There were some very significant concerns on the rooftop bar. One analogy I found most visual is putting a mandeville on top of a Main Street one-story building and with the roll-up doors, and you know, is that, you know, right under the mark as an example? And we have enough empirical data for problems, whether it be, dare I say the word, Melvin's or a hotel downtown with a rooftop bar. We've got some practical experience with things that have been to a degree problematic. We have a building permit for this new restaurant. So we've got some practical things to see how this template they're recommending would be applied in these specific things. And are we really ready? Do we really want to unleash that and then create a precedent that is hard to back out of? I mean, I sat through some of the court case of the One Park matter, and the lawyers spent an hour and a half arguing about the definition of adjacent versus abutting. So it just shows sometime that we've got to get, you know, the language right, the specifics right, and we know the heartburn about some of this stuff. I've heard the term, you know, if Obsidian, for example, ticks all the boxes, city management feels compelled, for lack of a better word, to approve it. Well, we want to get the boxes right, okay? We want to get the rules right. So if, you know, a year from now, we're ticking boxes, we thought that through of what the box needs to be set. So again, I would be with Peter in encouraging a pause, a dedicated workshop. I'll make a final point. When it came to the attainable housing ZTAs that were approved, I think everybody, rightly so, viewed that as a semi-emergency, right? We're gonna die. get a gun to our head to try and get something going. I think here, we've got a different kettle of fish, right? If a bar gets approved under the current regs, I mean, it's not gonna be the end of the world. So let's get it right. Let's get the right input from the community. We've got some recent experiences with the charrette. It's different, but maybe we've got our foot in the door for a better way to engage the public. So sorry for going on a bit, but I think that that's the way to go about it if we can.
Well,
I'd like to
and
see-
I can appreciate the, wanting to hit the pause, but I will say that, and I don't know the answer to this, maybe you know this, but if something were, we hit the pause on this and a bar would be able to be allowed to expand on a rooftop under the mark, how do you take that back? Because there isn't anything in place.
Well, that actually is. I mean,
So that would be.
the permit is reviewed annually. And you can review the permit based upon
That is-
the new set of regulations.
Okay,
Each
so
year, they
it's-
have to review the permit,
Okay.
and the evidence of justifying reissuing that permit. So it can be somewhat rescinded. It's not a forever and so. The other thing I wanted to, go ahead, Victor, because you're trying to say something.
What I was going to say was in the brief time we've had here, we've heard 4 different perspectives. And I'm new to them. I had a really distinct impression of exactly what I was going to do and concluded ultimately that the pause makes more sense. And so that's the reason why I agree with the positions of Peter and David and Peter have shown us here. Not the time to rush into this and then someone say, well, I've got my permit right now and I have a right, as a matter of right, to build something here. And then the next guy down the line, now we got 31
Right,
permits
you want
coming.
precedence, right? You don't want that to happen, you don't want that to become a problem.
That's the other side of what you're talking about.
Right, so I'm just looking at from Main Street, under the mark, I can see people saying, oh, they're gonna press pause on this. My God, it will be a little bit of an uproar. So I think the explanation that it is a permit that's reviewed on an annual basis makes sense.
Well, the
With
other
some
thing,
explanation behind
these
it.
are all level 1 kinds of definitions, what I consider level 1 thing, to take care of those. There is a level 2, and Patrick brought it up with the word impact. No one, and it came up at the plan, nobody has looked at what the impact these changes are gonna have on downtown's quality of life, the costs, the conversions that are gonna need to be made. There need to be some impact analysis. Because when you look at that exemption area and the expansion of the exemption area, nobody knows what's going to happen when you include that whole eastern end after Washington Boulevard. Does that become a little enclave all of itself that people get there and they won't travel downtown from there? Will that happen? Or do you need to put in an I-ride infrastructure there to keep people moving? So somebody be willing to pay to park in that exemption area with its expansion, and then get in their vehicle and move downtown? I don't think so. That's not going to happen. So there are a number of things, there are nuances to this thing that we can address and get it done right. That's all I'm saying.
The thing I will add is also behind the scenes I have made the case, tried to make the case, that there is some interplay between a potential new sound ordinance and these ETAs. Mr. Fournier and I have communicated on this, and I think he has tried to respect the planning department's request to keep things separate. I don't see how you do that. And I think that either on Monday, that hopefully the commission would ask him for, on truth serum, what is your view of the interplay? I cannot, for the life of me, understand how you would totally do this, and then that's a given, and then you got to force, in a way, your sound situations around something that's already rock solid in place. So I would hope that a workshop would be an open dialogue, because, think of the, the police, or the code compliance people, whoever's gonna be enforcing this. We don't want to create a Frankenstein that's kind of a Rube Goldberg thrown together thing that doesn't make sense. It's too important.
Yeah, and I would totally agree. I think the pause makes it seem it's a smart thing to do, get it done right.
When you sit there and you're thinking about the sound on one hand,
Yes.
when you actually have a letter from the city attorney talking about what is a venue, on the other
Right.
hand. On the other hand, you have the fact that you got a church that's only 500 feet away, and yet we don't have anything. There are certain cities in this state, for example, Palm Beach County, where they say negatively that if you build a bar, you're inviting violence, you're inviting fights, you're inviting all kinds of negative aspects to our life that absolutely, positively, they're saying in Palm Beach County, as a matter of fact, occurs. So as a result, the pause makes sense. Because why do we want to open up the door to endless amounts of litigation once they pass the ZETA, and, excuse me, Peter, as a matter of right, establish the right for me to put up, what do you call it, a bar,
Sure.
depending upon whether or not, if I have the bar where there's actually a restaurant on the inside, but there's a little counter on the outside, and I open up a wall, and all of a sudden now it's become we're asking for litigation.
Exactly.
I'm sorry I'm not doing this well. Usually I'm better than this, but this is hard to figure out.
Okay, so at this point, I don't think we're asking for any board action, or are we? The group, we want to meet. Do we want to meet one more time with a specific motion we could circulate before Monday? How do we see this? Peter, you're the parliament. What's the smart way to do this?
Peter, I'm asking for one more meeting.
Well, you're the chair, you can call a meeting anytime you want. People attend, you can have a meeting. Unless the board is saying, that's not. No, I think you can have a meeting. I think we've satisfied our legislative responsibility in reporting to the board. Board members can openly say yes or no. We could even put a motion on the floor if you wanted to do either of those, which I don't think is necessary at this point. I don't see this unless somebody has, like I say, on the board, has an objection.
The only other thing Mike suggests, I'll defer to Victor on this, is we could send out one of our email notices, just in terms of here's something happening we've done before, important meetings, or when there was community workshops, saying, hey, heads up, this is coming up on the calendar, and here's links to some backup material. And we could include the link to our June workshop that we held. There's a video of that. Like I said, I don't have the slides from that. I don't know if you ever received slides from Brianna. Remember, they didn't submit it to us, and Brianna said, oh, I'll send those to you, but I never got them.
I think I took pictures of them.
Well, it's on video, but I mean, yeah, we didn't have the slide, but that's the whole thing. And maybe it's on their website from that, but basically trying to get people up to speed of here's what's gone, what's the background, where some of these issues have been significantly discussed.
Well, I like the idea of getting it out and even linking it to the city agenda.
Yeah.
There's good material in the backup. I mean, it's well thought out. I like that.
Okay. All right, we have consensus on that, one more meeting and then to work.
Well, if you want to get a notice, I assume you want to do it before Friday or something.
Yep.
And I can help formulate that on the website, but I would need some content. It needs to keep it short, a couple paragraphs. So I'll leave to you or Victor.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay, so that's it for that. Okay. To be continued. Just one update. At the DRC this morning, some of you, I don't know how much attention you gave, on Fruitville and Fourth, there is a application to remove a proffer related to building height. It was discussed at the DRC this morning, and there was sign off. So it will now go to the planning board. The Encore townhomes have retained counsel. I've seen the attorney's letter regarding this. The RDA did a letter of support or, against the removal of the proffers also. So the next step on that is a planning board, which I assume to get that on the planning board agenda is probably a month out. But there's a real concern about the removal of property, and this is a contract purchaser is asking for the removal, not the current owner, right? So that's, to me, pretty troubling, but I won't get in the weeds about this. It did go through the DRCs. One park in Obsidian, you will have known that the air rights thing went one way, so it was reported in the paper that the one park people are moving ahead with the two tower approach. That's about all I know. There is a December 6th City Commission meeting scheduled on that, and the attorney for one attorney has recommended just canceling that meeting. I don't know where it stands or what.
On the legislative public hearing for the commission to approve the planning board's recommended denial of the changes to the Quay development agreement, master agreement, which would remove one sentence. The sentence says any Quay proposed development site plan must adhere to the Quay master site plan. That's all that change is removing one sentence that says your development site plan must adhere to the master plan, master map. That's what they're trying to get removed. So that was a legislative thing that's now gone, it's scheduling over to the commission. So it's a legislative matter. I don't know if that can be dropped. I guess they can withdraw their legislative request for that.
I was a little bit confused by that too, because Bob Lincoln wrote the letter, as I recall, saying that she canceled December 6th meeting.
Right.
They should, but it's a totally different matter in the fact that they're saying it should be linked to one or the other, but it becomes moot, I think, given the ruling. Right. But it's an important question that basically it's similar to the other proper thing is after you've made a master contractual agreement and then you have a contract purchaser, not the site developer, come along and say, oh, let's go back and change that original agreement. That kind of process is what's, I think, is troubling overall fairness for the development. You say, let's follow the plans, and then when somebody says, oh, no, let's change the plans, retroactive.
I think what troubles me is the fact that Lincoln made the request and there's been no response. And I don't understand the reason why there hasn't been a response.
I don't
It's
know.
up to lawyers.
It was about a week ago. Okay, on the Obsidian, the Lucia Panica made her determination. It has been appealed, so it will go to the planning board, right? To my knowledge, that hasn't been set on the planning board calendar. Bob, on the Conservancy.
I think we all know everything that's going over there in spades.
The AG is now the acting.
So it was a fantastic celebration. They were, I mean, they've heard so many good things about it.
I think till there were 2,500 people there that weekend, something like that.
There's more than that.
So do we have any idea why the 5-month CEO is gone?
Can only speculate. I better I'm happy AG is back.
I'd like to follow up with you on the question of what was the traffic like moving in and out.
Exactly.
And the city ought to have some information on exactly what it was. What I saw from the 9th floor was on the way in, the hold up there was easily now, trying to get into that when everything was going on at the same time. On the way out, it was smooth. So I'd like to get some comment.
One of the advantages of living across the street, you just walk across the street and have to drive.
But was there an issue, though, I thought Vicky had raised about the fact that to hold the event, bring in the food trucks, put the food trucks in the parking lot where we have the handicap parking. And so 4 handicap parking slots were taken up for the food trucks. And so where were handicapped people supposed to park if there's only like 2 spaces on Boulevard of the Arts? So that meant that we'd have to go up into the Civic Arts parking area, which is hefty walk.
Well, this handicapped person couldn't go
That's what I'm
to the
saying.
WBBT event because I couldn't walk that distance. So
But you
again,
could take an eye ride.
I could take an hour.
It does raise a question about the appropriate planning into special events and whether handicap is fully considered.
It's a good point. Okay, all right. CCNA, there's a meeting Saturday, which I will be attending. Ron Turner, the supervisor of elections, is a guest speaker, so that'll be interesting. And the Rosemary Association, I'm about to slit my wrist. There are no signs of activity for the park construction.
No.
They, the latest commitment was November 1st, and I didn't see anything happening there today. I see no building permits applied for, so I don't know what to do.
The grass continues to grow.
Yeah, it was cut actually this morning. I mean, that's the one thing.
Think back on the CCNA, what was, there was a workshop we had our last meeting, we came up with topics or
Right.
goals and so forth. Then you went to a workshop, what was the result of that?
They're doing a summary of that will be unveiled. I haven't seen it yet. But there were 20 neighborhoods or so represented in breakout groups and stuff like that. And I used the material that I shared with you folks, right, as our input for that better word. So I don't have anything to report.
They haven't put out the summary yet.
Yeah, if they have, it's in my inbox.
Oh,
yeah, okay, sorry. That's all in the Rosemary, we do have the reopening of Wolfie's Rascals in the old Overton. They're supposed to have their grand opening tomorrow. There is some concern about, including me as a resident, of what exactly is planned there and signage and stuff, but that's another story working its way through.
But what happened to the public space that was dedicated to that property?
Yeah, the plaza there. Right?
Yes, that's supposed to be
It's supposed to be
dedicated as a public space. Yeah, it
Well,
seems to be, since they
it is-
removed the artwork and the 2 palms, there's very little and there were never any benches put in that was part of the proposal that the city commission approved.
Yep.
So there's no public space there. There's significant commercial tables, but we're not allowed to go sit at a table. We're not aligned from park, right?
I guess. I mean, it is now 2/3 full of tables. Okay.
And there's no one speaking up on that issue. Sure.
I have certainly spoke up on signage and illumination lights, but specifically on that. At the moment, no.
Right, that's what happens when the city gives away city land and it gets commercialized. Totally commercialized. And the foothold of public space is gone.
Well, the grand opening, like I said, is tomorrow, and let's see what is tried to be taken, for the word. With that said, is Annika?
She's not, but I can get up and
Okay,
introduce
all right.
everybody. So I think we're gonna start with Steve of Hotwire, if you wanna come on up, say a few things.
One of our platinum members. Thanks, Jamie. Most of you know me by now, how our communications growing very quickly as we expand our fiber optic network in downtown Sarasota. A lot of interest from a lot of condominiums in the downtown area to provide internet and television services. As I've said before, and I'm going to say it again, I thank you as an associate member, it's very important to us, the kinds of workshops that you put on. It gives us a lot of exposure, continues to build our name recognition in the city, and I never cease to walk away from a workshop with less than one or two really solid leads for new business, and that's really what it's all about. So I'd encourage you to continue to put on those things. They're not only valuable, obviously, for residents, but as people who support this organization, it's valuable for us as well. And Jamie, if you want to give me a call or email, be happy to help out on the holiday party.
Great. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah. Steve.
All right, Paul, Serpro.
Sure. So I do want to say that I have something a little bit more fun to talk about this time, other than preventing hurricane damage and treating mold and all that kind of fun stuff. So I'm holding in my hand a hold the date notice. I'm going to leave them on the table over there for what we're calling our SRQ VIP social event. It's really a nice affair. We had a trial run back in July. I had about 15, 20 board members only attend. David, you were there. And the feedback was it was a very nice event. There was no pressure. While it is sponsored by the vendors, there's no selling involved. It's really meant to have you all get together, meet each other, discuss common problems, solutions, that kind of thing, and make new relationships. So with that, I'm going to leave these out there. I would also ask for the member representatives to go onto the DSCA website, look at your event calendar, scroll down to the vendor events. I did post the item there. There is a registration page. All you need to do is click on it. I would love to see you drive one or two of your board members at each of your condominium associations to attend. So with that, space is limited. We already got 12. So homework assignment is when you go home tonight, do that. And that's that. Thanks for the time.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
All right, we're going to move on to our goal members. Fred from Alderman Hills.
Always a pleasure to be with you. Hanging around here for about 50 years now. I'm looking forward to becoming a resident in the future. Give up the ranch out in Old Mac and move downtown. So I have a little self-interest going on. Jazz, wine, cheese. We're not a bar. We're not a restaurant. We don't cause too much trouble in the neighborhood, do we?
No. I'm sitting out on my patio listening to the jazz.
Under the ancient oak. So I hope you can come. Our fourth Fridays have been very successful. We're up to about 50 people now. So come by fourth Friday. This month, December 1st. So I've got, and that's just a pleasure to be with this group. We share a lot of the same issues. So thank you.
Thanks, Fred. Last but not least, Michelle.
Hi, I'm Michelle with City National Bank. Sorry I missed you all in the summer. I have a golf league on Wednesday nights. So kind of the big thing, I'm with City National Bank. We're the second largest Florida-based bank. We're still considered a community bank by our size. We're a $26 billion bank. And with all the statute changes that the Condo Association 718 is facing there, you guys are looking at milestone inspections, phase 1 and phase 2, SIRS. I'm a licensed CAM, so I stay up to date with my license, but we are lending. So if there's an opportunity to work with you on deciding whether you need a loan or a special assess or do both, I'd be happy to come talk with you, your board, the manager, whoever needs to join that conversation. So I am available. We also have reserve accounts. We are a full service association banking. So if there's anything I can help you, board members with, we're happy to speak with you all. I do attend board meetings, so happy to support you all. And again, resonating with Steve, I'd be happy to help you guys with your Christmas party. Whether you know, bring food or drink. So, but thanks for having us. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. And that's it.
Okay,
For the
and
associate member.
any comments from the member reps on Zoom or here? Any comments? Okay. Let me just editorialize here. I think Jennifer was a terrific guest. And I think that with everybody's help here, we've strung together. And so looking for suggestions for January and February, December is a little lighter with the jazz folks. So our next meeting is Wednesday, December 6th. And we'll be getting invitations out to additional city staff folks, some of the key people we'd like to thank for their support. And Commissioner Jen, thank you again for being with us. Any final comments? Otherwise, let's consider ourselves adjourned and time for a glass of wine. Thanks.